A stepfather's secret affair with his stepdaughter ends in a deadly discovery, unraveling a family's hidden truths. James Henry was a successful businessman. He lived with his wife, Amelia, who stayed at home, and her daughter from a previous marriage, Celeste, in a big house. Their neighbors thought they were the perfect family, rich, good-looking, and happy. But beneath their pretty lawns and fancy dinner parties, something dark was happening. They were about to be pulled into a mess of forbidden love, betrayal, and violence. What started as normal marriage problems turned into a shocking story of a forbidden romance between James and his stepdaughter, ending in a terrible death and lives ruined. James and Amelia Harper's love story began like many others. They met by chance at a charity event in Philadelphia in the spring of 2010. James, then 35, was rising in the world of finance, known for his smart mind and charm. Amelia, 32 at the time, was divorced with a young daughter, working as an interior designer for rich clients. Their fast-paced romance caught the attention of their friends. James loved Amelia's elegance and intelligence, while Amelia found the stability and success she wanted after her rough first marriage. Within 6 months, James proposed, giving Amelia a stunning diamond ring that made their friends jealous. The wedding at the Rittenhouse Hotel was the big event of the season. Amelia's 7-year-old daughter, Celeste, was the flower girl, her sweet face beaming as she watched her mother marry the man who would become her stepfather. For the first few years, the Harpers seemed to be doing great. James' career skyrocketed, and he soon became a partner at his firm. Amelia immersed herself in her new role as the quintessential corporate spouse, orchestrating dinner parties and charity events that solidified their status in high society. She lavished attention on Celeste, ensuring the child lacked for nothing, from top-tier education to luxurious holidays. However, as the excitement of their new life together faded, cracks began to form in their marriage. James extended hours at work, and frequent business trips left Amelia feeling abandoned. She had sacrificed her own career to support his, and now she found herself increasingly lonely in their spacious, empty home. Amelia's attempts to revive the romance were met with apathy from James, who seemed more engrossed in his work than his wife. Their once lively conversations, filled with laughter and shared dreams, devolved into brief discussions about household chores and Celeste's school activities. By the time Celeste started high school, the Harpers' marriage had become a facade. They slept in separate bedrooms, explaining James snoring to inquisitive friends. Their interactions were polite but distant, resembling business associates more than affectionate partners. Amelia dedicated herself to volunteer work and her role as Celeste's mother, living through her daughter's social achievements. James buried himself further in his work, taking on additional responsibilities at the firm and spending even less time at home. Neither was willing to concede and pursue a divorce. Their mutual fear of scandal, the convenience of their lifestyle, and concerns about its impact on Celeste kept them ensnared in their loveless relationship. Interestingly, a recent study indicated that couples in high-pressure jobs are 40% more likely to experience marital tension compared to those in less demanding careers. Furthermore, statistics show that only 20% of such couples seek counseling, leading to prolonged dissatisfaction. Despite their opulent lifestyle, the Harpers were not immune to the stresses that come with success. The divorce rate among partners at elite law firms is 30% higher than the national average, underscoring the significant strain these careers can impose on personal relationships. Yet James and Amelia clung to the fragments of their former happiness, believing that maintaining appearances would suffice. They had no idea that their perfect appearance was about to fall apart in a surprising and sad way. As Celeste grew from a smart child into a beautiful young woman, things began to change in the Harper home. Now 18 and getting ready for college, Celeste had her mother's grace and her biological father's lively spirit. Celeste was always close to her mother, though sometimes it was tough because Amelia was very protective and tried to live through her daughter's experiences. James had been a caring stepfather, going to her performances and helping with her homework. But as his marriage to Amelia became colder, he spent less time with Celeste. During Celeste's last year of high school, James, feeling older as he neared 50, started to show more interest in her life. He proudly attended her dance shows and talked with her about college, giving advice on majors and careers. At first, Amelia was happy to see James acting like part of the family again. She supported the bond between James and Celeste, hoping it might help their marriage. But over time, Amelia noticed something strange in the way James looked at Celeste and how their talks would stop suddenly when she came into the room. Celeste, for her part, felt a strong attraction to James that both excited and confused her. His attention made her feel noticed in a way she hadn't before. She began to dress more carefully when she knew he'd be home to seek out his company, under the guise of needing help with college applications or financial advice. The tension in the house grew palpable. Family dinners became a minefield of loaded glances and double entendre. Amelia watched with growing unease as her daughter and husband orbited each other, their gravitational pulls seeming to exclude her entirely. As Celeste's high school graduation approached, the Harper house was a powder keg of unspoken desires and simmering resentments. None of them could have predicted the explosion that was to come, or the devastating aftermath that would follow. The line between appropriate stepfather-stepdaughter affection and something more sinister was crossed on a rainy night in April, just weeks before Celeste's graduation. Amelia was out of town for a charity event, leaving James and Celeste alone in the house. They had settled in to watch a movie, a bottle of wine between them. James reasoning that at 18, Celeste was old enough for a glass or two under parental supervision. As the wine flowed and the storm raged outside, their inhibitions lowered. Celeste, emboldened by alcohol and the charged atmosphere, confessed to James that she had always found him attractive. James, his judgment clouded and his loneliness overwhelming, responded not with the fatherly dismissal he should have, but with a confession of his own growing feelings. One touch led to another, and soon they found themselves entangled on the couch, years of suppressed attraction exploding into a passionate encounter. The next morning brought with it shame, confusion, and the thrill of forbidden fruit tasted. Both James and Celeste swore it would never happen again, that it was a mistake born of loneliness and wine. But the dam had broken, and the flood of desire was not so easily contained. Secret looks turned into secret kisses. Hidden touches under the dinner table. Text messages planning secret meetings. They told themselves it was okay. James wasn't Celeste's real father, they thought. Amelia had been distant for years. They were both adults who agreed to this. They believed love couldn't be wrong. But the guilt bothered them, especially Celeste. She saw the hurt in her mother's eyes and the growing suspicion. She knew how much damage this would cause if it was found out. Yet she couldn't stop. She was addicted to the thrill of their forbidden relationship. James kept things separate in his mind, as he did with everything in his life. When he was with Amelia, he acted like a distant but responsible husband. At work, he was the perfect professional. But in those secret moments with Celeste, he let himself feel a passion he thought he had lost. Their meetings became more frequent and risky as time went on. They met at a motel outside town, pretending to be on college tours. They had heated moments in Amelia's car, parked in quiet places. Each time they promised it would be the last. Each time they ended up together again, unable to resist. But as spring turned to summer, their web of lies started to catch up with them, threatening everyone involved. As Celeste's first year of college came closer, the affair with James became more intense. The thought of being apart made their passion stronger. Each meeting was urgent and desperate. They took bigger risks, their desire overpowering their caution. James began making excuses to visit Celeste at her college, just a 2-hour drive away. James would say he had business meetings in the area, but in reality, he was spending long, luxurious afternoons with Celeste in her dorm room. Celeste would make up study groups and extracurricular activities to explain her frequent trips home on weekends. Their actions began to affect their relationships with others. James became even more distant from Amelia, barely able to look at her without feeling guilty. He threw himself into his work with new energy, using it as both an escape and an excuse for his absences. Celeste struggled to connect with her college friends, always holding back and guarding her big secret. The affair also changed them as people. James, feeling younger because of his relationship with Celeste, started paying more attention to his looks. He joined a gym, updated his wardrobe, and even thought about hair restoration treatments. His colleagues noticed his new energy and assumed he had found a good balance between work and life. Celeste, meanwhile, felt both excited and ashamed. She did well in her studies, using her strong emotions to focus on her coursework, but her social life suffered. She turned down advances from classmates, unable to think about a normal relationship while involved with her stepfather. There were close calls that should have been wake-up calls. Once, Amelia almost walked in on them in a compromising position in the pool house, but a phone call delayed her arrival. Another time, one of Celeste's dorm mates saw James leaving her room early in the morning, leading to awkward questions that Celeste clumsily answered. Despite these close calls, James and Celeste believed they could keep their secret forever. They started to make small plans for a future together, talking quietly about the day they could finally show their love openly. James talked about divorcing Amelia and starting a new life with Celeste after she finished college. Celeste dreamed about a fairy tale wedding, ignoring the pain it would cause her mother. But as their dream future became more detailed, so did the lies they had to tell to keep their secret now. Amelia began to notice James' finances, questioning his increased business expenses and strange cash withdrawals. Celeste's grades, though still good, started to drop as the stress of living a double life wore her down. The pressure increased, and the cracks in their fake lives grew bigger every day. Still, they continued. Each secret moment together made them believe their love was worth any price. They didn't realize the cost would be much higher than they could imagine, and that the consequences were coming sooner than they thought. During a lunch with her friend Beatrice, Amelia first began to suspect something. Beatrice, who loved to gossip, mentioned casually that she had seen James and Celeste having a serious conversation at a cafe in town when Celeste should have been at college and James at work. The way Beatrice described their body language, leaning in close, hands touching on the table, sent a chill down Amelia's spine. She laughed it off and changed the subject, but the seed of doubt was planted. From then on, Amelia began to watch her husband and daughter more closely. She saw the long looks, the private jokes she didn't get, and how they always found ways to be alone together. As the signs piled up, Amelia stayed in denial because the truth was too awful to accept. But every day, the truth came closer to being revealed, ready to explode and ruin their lives. The day Amelia's world fell apart began like any other. It was a warm June morning, with the air thick and hinting at summer storms. Amelia planned to meet friends for lunch, but when they canceled at the last minute, she suddenly had a free afternoon. On a whim, she decided to surprise James at his office, maybe suggesting a spontaneous date night to try to revive their failing relationship. But James wasn't at his office. His assistant, caught off guard by Amelia's visit, let it slip that James had left early, mentioning a family emergency. Amelia felt a chill. There was no family emergency she knew of. With trembling hands, she took out her phone and opened the tracking app she had installed weeks ago in a moment of suspicion. The dot showing James's location was not at home or at a hospital, but at an address on the edge of town. The drive to that address was a blur. Amelia moved automatically, her mind racing with thoughts, each one worse than the last. She arrived at a small motel, the kind that rented rooms by the hour. And there, in the parking lot, was James' car. Amelia sat in her own car, unable to decide what to do next. Did she really want to know the truth? Maybe she could just drive away and pretend she never saw this. But then another car pulled into the lot, Celeste's old college Honda. The world seemed to spin as Amelia watched her daughter hurry across the parking lot and knock on one of the motel room doors. It opened, and James's familiar shape appeared for a moment before Celeste slipped inside. Amelia sat in shock, unable to believe what she had just seen. Seconds felt like hours as she stared at the closed motel room door, hoping it was a mistake, a misunderstanding, anything but the betrayal it clearly was. Finally, driven by instinct, Amelia got out of her car. She raised her hand to knock but paused, her fist trembling in midair. From inside, she heard muffled laughter, Celeste's light giggle, and James's deeper chuckle. The sounds of their happiness felt like a knife in her heart. Taking a deep breath, Amelia steadied herself and knocked sharply on the door. The laughter stopped suddenly, replaced by hushed, panicked whispers. She knocked again, louder this time, as her calm exterior began to crack. The silence stretched on before she heard movement inside. The door opened slowly, revealing James with his hair messy and his shirt hastily buttoned. Behind him, Amelia saw Celeste, her face full of guilt and fear. In that moment, As Amelia looked from her husband to her daughter, the full weight of their betrayal hit her, her already fragile world completely shattered. The tension in the small motel room was unbearable as Amelia stepped inside. Her eyes darted between James and Celeste. No one spoke for a long moment. The only sounds were the hum of the old air conditioner and the pounding of Amelia's heart in her ears. Finally, Amelia broke the silence. James tried to speak, his voice strained, but Amelia interrupted him, her voice eerily calm. James moved forward, trying to protect Celeste. "Amelia, please. This isn't Celeste's fault," he pleaded. Amelia let out a bitter laugh. The argument quickly intensified, with years of pent-up resentment and betrayal spilling out. Accusations flew back and forth. Amelia accused James of manipulating Celeste and taking advantage of her youth and innocence. James defended their relationship, insisting it was true love and that Celeste was now an adult. Celeste, caught between her mother and the man she thought she loved, tried desperately to calm the situation. She begged Amelia to understand, swearing that James had never taken advantage of her and that their feelings were mutual, but Amelia couldn't be reasoned with. In her eyes, this was the ultimate betrayal, not just as a wife, but as a mother. As the shouting grew louder, Amelia noticed James moving toward the bedside table. She saw a glint of metal and realized with horror that he was reaching for something, the gun he kept for protection. Time seemed to slow down. Amelia lunged at James, determined to stop him from doing something terrible. Celeste, seeing her mother's sudden movement, thought she was attacking James and tried to intervene. In the struggle, the gun went off. The sound of the shot was deafening in the small room. Amelia's scream broke the silence. James stood frozen, the gun slipping from his hands. As Amelia tried desperately to stop the bleeding from her daughter's wound, the full horror of what had happened hit her. Their secret was out, and the consequences were worse than they could have ever imagined. The gunshot at the motel brought a quick response from the police. Within minutes, the small parking lot was filled with flashing lights as police cars and an ambulance arrived. First responders found a tragic scene in room 114. Celeste lay on the floor, barely clinging to life despite Amelia's frantic efforts to stop the bleeding. James sat slumped in a corner, staring blankly, the gun on the floor where he had dropped it. Amelia, covered in her daughter's blood, alternated between begging the paramedics and crying uncontrollably. Detective Liam Donovan, an experienced officer, took charge of the scene. As Celeste was rushed to the hospital, Donovan began to piece together what had happened. The evidence was clear. One shot fired, one victim, and the gun registered to James Henry. But the reason behind it was unclear. Initial questioning of Amelia and James provided conflicting stories. Both were too upset to give a clear account of what had happened. As news of the shooting spread, the quiet community was shocked and in disbelief. The Harpers had always seemed like the perfect family. They were successful, respected, and active in local charities. The idea of such violence among them was almost unbelievable to their neighbors and friends. In the days that followed, as Celeste fought for her life in the ICU, Detective Donovan and his team worked tirelessly to uncover the truth. They reviewed phone records, interviewed friends and co-workers, and looked into the family's background. Gradually, a different picture began to form, a family far from perfect. As Detective Donovan dug deeper, the facade of the perfect family quickly fell apart. Interviews with family, friends, and colleagues revealed a marriage that had been without love for a long time, held together only by appearances and financial convenience. Beatrice Whitaker, Amelia's closest friend, provided key information about Amelia's growing suspicions in the months before the shooting. She recalled tearful lunches where Amelia had expressed her fears about James's possible cheating, never guessing the true nature of his betrayal. James' co-workers described a man who had seemed refreshed in recent months, often talking about a new love in his life. They assumed he was having a typical midlife crisis affair, never imagining the person he was involved with was his own stepdaughter. But it was Celeste's college roommate who gave the most damning evidence. Assured of police confidentiality, Zoe shared many text messages Celeste had sent her, detailing the affair with James in the excited, love-struck language typical of a young woman who thought she was in true love. The digital evidence was very helpful for the investigators. Phone records showed hundreds of calls and messages between James and Celeste at strange times. Financial records revealed that James had given Celeste many expensive gifts, jewelry, designer clothes, and even a car, all hidden from Amelia. There were also records of hotel stays and weekend trips that were disguised as business or college visits. As more evidence came to light, the full extent of James and Celeste's deception became clear. This was not a sudden passion or a brief mistake. Their affair had been going on for over a year, carefully planned and hidden from Amelia and everyone else. The revelation of the affair changed how people saw the events in the motel room. What first seemed like an accidental gunshot during an argument now looked like a possible crime of passion. As Celeste slowly recovered in the hospital, everyone wondered, who had really pulled the trigger? Was it James, trying to silence Celeste to protect himself? Was it Amelia, in a rage over their betrayal? Or was it Celeste, overwhelmed by guilt and shame when confronted by her mother? Detective Donovan thought the truth might be more complicated than anyone had first believed. The district attorney took over the case. After reviewing the evidence collected by Detective Donovan and his team, she decided to charge both James and Amelia with attempted murder. James, once a successful businessman, looked tired and defeated in his orange jumpsuit. His lawyer, a powerful attorney named Xavier Brockton, argued that the shooting was a tragic accident, the result of a struggle for the gun during a heated family fight. Amelia, on the other hand, seemed to have aged years since the incident. Her lawyer said she was a victim, a woman betrayed by her husband and daughter. She acted in self-defense when she thought James was reaching for the gun to silence them both. Celeste's role in the incident was very important. As the only witness to the shooting besides her parents, her testimony was crucial. But Celeste, still recovering from her injuries, used her right to remain silent and refused to testify against either parent. In the end, James Henry accepted a plea deal. In a quiet courtroom, he pleaded guilty to aggravated assault and got a 10-year prison sentence. As he was led away in handcuffs, he looked at Amelia one last time, showing the pain, betrayal, and regret that had torn their family apart. Amelia, with charges against her dropped, left the courthouse a free woman, but one forever changed by the ordeal. Within months, she sold the family home and moved out of state, looking for a fresh start away from the gossip and judging looks. Once Celeste healed from her physical wounds, she faced the tough task of healing her emotional and mental scars. She left college and entered therapy to deal with the trauma of the shooting and her complicated feelings about James. Her relationship with Amelia remained strained, the breach of trust between mother and daughter creating a gap not easily fixed. The Henry case faded from the national news, but its impact stayed. It was a reminder that even the most picture-perfect families can have dark secrets. The community, shaken by the violence, started programs to address domestic violence and promote healthier family dynamics.